Welcome to the Get Sculpted podcast. We're your hosts, Tiana,
Jordana,
and Marilyn.
This podcast is all about cutting through the noise and giving you the real deal on fat loss, muscle building, and what it really takes to build your 2.0 sculpted self, inside and out. Our motto is to work smarter, not harder. We'll break down science-based and actionable strategies to optimize your metabolism, ditch the diets, and create a sustainable, fit, and healthy lifestyle that actually works for you. So if you're ready to get stronger, not just skinnier, and embrace a body you love, hit that subscribe button and let's get sculpted.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Get Sculpted podcast. Today, we are getting into a topic that I personally think is very misunderstood, but I think it's incredibly important for any woman who is trying to build a strong, sculpted body. And that is the dangers of overtraining and undereating and how both of these things can actually backfire and keep you from reaching your goals. So if you are a woman who has been putting hours in at the gym, you're cutting calories because you think all of this is going to speed up your progress, then this episode is definitely for you, because we are going to get into the why more is better is not actually working, and it's sabotaging your work. So there is this saying that you might have heard that says there's no such thing as overtraining, just under recovering. And there's actually a lot of truth there. When you train, you're actually putting stress on your body, but it becomes a good type of stress when you're giving your body what it actually needs to adapt and get stronger. Without that rest and recovery or the right nutrients, things will definitely start to go downhill. And this is especially true for women in those perimenopause years and beyond, because hormones are changing and it makes it much harder for your body to bounce back. So you're going to feel sore, you're going to feel fatigued. And if you're not careful, this leads to that cycle where you're always sore and tired and your progress will stall out. So big takeaway we want to start this episode with is overtraining isn't just caused by training itself. It's usually because there's a lack of balance between stress and recovery. Wouldn't you agree, ladies?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah. There's an analogy actually that I really quickly want to share that I just read now. And it's your body's like an iPhone. It still works the same, but when you're in perimenopause, your battery is going to get depleted a lot faster. So you just might need to charge more frequently.
I love that.
I love that.
And the charging is recovery. Everything you're talking about. Yeah. The rest, all the things we're going to get into.
And you know, when you add undereating into that mix of overtraining, then your body's not getting enough calories. It's not going to repair. And again, all of this is going to keep you from seeing the progress you want. And I see this with clients all the time. I know you ladies can probably attest to this. They come to us and they're like, I'm doing everything right. I'm working out all the time. I'm eating clean, but they're exhausted. They don't look like they work out. That's another big one. And it's because they're depriving their body of what they actually need to see progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. And I always tell people that even if you're working out frequently, it doesn't mean anything unless the time is spent right.
That's right.
So, you know, when people will say, but I'm working out every day, how could I possibly work out more? Like these overtrainers tend to be people who are high achievers. They go balls to the wall. Mm-hmm. They do all the things and they're so frustrated because they're like, I'm spending so much time and effort. Why is it not showing? And they think, how am I going to possibly do more than I am now? But it's like the analogy saying I'm training 5 days a week. Why am I not in shape? Is like saying I work 40 hours a week. Why am I not rich? Well,
right.
To us, the answer is obvious. To anybody, it's because it really matters how you spend that time. Are you spending it efficiently? Are you doing so with a purpose? Is it an outcome-based goal? Is it an outcome-based program?
Right.
Are you following something that's going to ultimately get you the result that you want? So I really want the take-home message to be, if you're asking, well, how many hours a week should I spend working out? I can't tell you. I can't say, okay, spend 5 hours, because that 5 hours could be spent on garbage stuff that doesn't actually
That's right.
doesn't serve a purpose. Or I could tell you, you could spend 3 hours and you're going to do targeted training and you're going to train at a high intensity and you're actually going to know what you're doing. And that's going to lead to the outcome of getting toned and building muscle and actually yielding what you want your workouts to yield.
That's right. Because there's nothing worse than feeling like you're doing all the work and it's not working. I can't even tell you how many times I've heard that from women saying that they do work out all the time, but they kind of feel like they have nothing to show for it. So I think you hit it on the head with two words, purpose and intention with the training that you do.
And that's why I love our Sculpted standard, work smarter, not harder. It's really not even just a philosophy with our training principles, but it's with how we've approached our entire philosophy around training, nutrition, mindset work. And when you learn how to work smarter, not harder, and in all of those areas, you're actually going to be saving time.
Yes.
So when you implement those things around training, you don't have to actually spend 7-10 hours in the gym. You don't have to work out every single day lifting the way that the overtraining mindset has us believing. But you can work out with efficiency. You can work out with intensity. You can work out with purpose, like we're all saying, and actually spend less time in the gym so that you can go and do other things in your life too. Because we all have other activities we love.
That's right.
Yeah. I was going to share just a quick little story about my client, Julie. So she trains a ton. She's just turned 50 and she trains about 4 or 5 days a week lifting weights, and she runs 2 to 3 times a week. And some people would look at that and say, oh my gosh, she's 50. That's too much training.
Right.
But here's the thing with her. She's eating 2,500 calories. She's 130 pounds and she's lean. She has muscle. And not everyone can train as much as her and recover well, but it's because she spent years and years getting the right sleep, eating enough calories to support those goals. She's prioritizing her mental health. She's not drinking. She's built the base of muscle and adapted her body to that amount of stress. So I really want people to know that when you're doing things correctly and you know how to train, you can do so in a way that doesn't leave you injured and doesn't leave you sore.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a huge, huge point is overtraining and under-recovering. The injuries are a real factor, right? We have to be very careful because I also had clients come to me saying that they did go balls to the wall. They hurt themselves or they were so sore, then they had to take a week off. Then they got back to it, did balls to the wall again. And then it was like a cycle of starting and stopping. So even just that is keeping you in a holding pattern where you're making no progress.
So true.
Right?
That's why getting professional guidance is the best thing ever. And I just want to not go on a rant, but just give people a PSA. Because sometimes people think I know what I'm doing and they've only really done self-guided workouts and they've gone on YouTube. Maybe they've gone to the gym and they've done kind of like the rounds of the machines. Maybe they did a couple sessions as an intro with a personal trainer, but they might not actually know the optimal form and technique. And that's not good for a couple reasons. Number one, injury, like you mentioned, that's going to set you back 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of thing. And also, you're not going to get the effectiveness of what that exercise entails. Because, for example, if you don't understand, you don't have that trained eye, you're doing lunges and you're thinking, I'm targeting my quads, for example, but you could just be targeting your low back unintentionally because your stance is off or something like that, just as an example. So I think spending the time, working smarter, not harder, also means investing the time and the money into working with a professional who's going to show you, hey, this is how you get more bang for your buck out of the time you're spending.
Yes. And I would add to that, it's ongoing. So it's not just like a one-time, okay, I got help.
Yeah.
That's something that I'm very proud of with the ladies who are part of our community is that we're constantly overseeing the training they're doing from phase to phase, program to program. We have our own movement specialist in-house who helps our clients with their form because it has to be something that happens continuously on the journey, not just like a one and done. You know, like I had my squat checked, I'm good. It's something you have to keep doing over and over.
Yeah, your squat just doesn't need to be checked the first time you do it. It's when you go from using dumbbells to going into the rack. It's when you hit a new PR. It's when you've healed from an injury. It's after you've been sick. It's after a few months of performing them a certain way, you want to get reassessed again.
That's right.
So having the opportunity, you know, Francesca, having her in-house, take a look at your form over and over again. She's going to see things like your breathing, your tempo, the load and the weights that you're using. She's going to notice the movement pattern, your range of motion. All of these things help you actually work smarter, not harder, because when you're performing each exercise as efficiently and as effectively as possible, you're going to get the most out of that workout session. So you don't have to think about overtraining anymore, doing the most amount of reps or sets or volume throughout the week to get the goal that you're after. You can actually do less, better to achieve the result that you want.
Exactly.
That was a really good tie-in to everything we were saying. And I know that a big part of this, Jord, which is really like one of your areas of genius is, let's talk about the under-eating piece of the puzzle.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, yes. I love this space because we all tend to have grown up in, and still even today, the mindset is eat less to weigh less.
That's right.
And get smaller in order to get your goals faster. And this, I think, is one of the most misunderstood areas in the fitness and nutrition space.
Absolutely.
And one of the biggest myths that continues to persist is women should eat less and less and less in order to achieve this toned, sculpted look. And in fact, it's actually the reverse. And what I've learned as an eating psychology coach, and to sum it all up in almost like one sentence, it's essentially undereating is the best way to end up overeating.
Yep.
And I want you to hear that again. Undereating is the best and fastest way to end up overeating. Now, why is that? So when we undereat perpetually, yes, we might be in a caloric deficit, right? We might end up being in that caloric deficit that we need to have in order to have fat loss. But if we're in too steep of a caloric deficit, that becomes unsustainable. And so when we're talking about, you know, the popular diets that are 1,000 calories or 1,200 calories, or eating like friggin' cucumbers all day, and then having like these like negative calorie foods that people have been popularizing for far too long, and thinking that that's going to help them have this lean toned look, all that you're doing is undereating for so long that you're creating this window of uncontrolled food consumption at some point later on. So then you have this like group of people, and maybe this is you who's listening, where you're like, I eat clean Monday to Friday. Like, I am so on it. I am 100%. I can do anything Monday to Friday. But then rolls around 5 p.m. on Friday and you're done work and you get home and you're like, okay, I'm done with the week. Now what?
Yep.
And the wine comes out and the dinner's out and the takeout.
The chips, the crackers,
the pantry.
Yeah. And you are so hungry. The pantry is calling your name. You go grocery shopping hungry after work and you're just like, boom, boom, boom. All of these things end up in your grocery cart, end up on your pantry, end up on your plate. And you go into this frame of mind where you need to like refuel. And a lot of my clients that have come to me in the past have gone into these places where it's almost unconscious. It's uncontrollable eating. It's beyond mindless at this point. Mindless eating is, you know, you have a bowl of popcorn, you're watching a movie, and then you didn't realize you ate more than what you thought you would in the bowl. This kind of eating is uncontrolled because you're already so hungry that your body's trying to rebalance itself and be able to say, okay, we underate so much earlier in the week that now we need to play catch up. And the danger of this is that, you know, we don't know what our hunger cues are actually like. And hunger cues are a great way to normalize when you're not working towards a fat loss goal or specifically tracking for a muscle building goal. When you're just living life, you need to have really in tune, balanced hunger cues to be able to, you know, acknowledge and have a solid relationship within your body to say, oh yeah, now I'm hungry, but oh yeah, now I'm comfortably full. And we want to be able to manage that well. I would love to hear from you girls. Like, what have you heard from your clients around these cravings when they're starting to shift from under eating to eating more foods? How have they noticed the shift for them?
Before I answer that, though, I just have to share with you this kind of funny visual. I can't take credit for it. I did hear it from a nutritionist. The name escapes me, but that whole idea of undereating, and then getting to that point where you're starving. The visual is a pantry raccoon. That's what she said. Because you know how raccoons are like scavengers? She said you literally go to your pantry, you open it up, and you're just digging for anything and everything. So to your point.
Been there.
Right. I think we all have. But I just thought, what a perfect visual. And I've used that with some of my clients, that pantry raccoon. And they're like, my gosh, that's exactly what it's like. I'm just standing there trying to put so much in my mouth. And so, yeah, so for me, that's always stuck, the pantry raccoon. I want to avoid getting to that point where I feel like a pantry raccoon.
We've been there, and I can relate to that. But it's funny because sometimes I've disconnected myself so far from those days that when my clients make that shift, I'm like, okay, I remember that. Because when they skipped meals or did fasting, a lot of them started with fasting and thought that was good. And fasting can be a surefire way to binge for some people, wouldn't you say?
Yes, I agree.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's what happened. So then eventually one of my clients, Jessica, told me, like, my coworkers are surprised I'm eating lunch because usually I work right through lunch. And she says, you know, for the first time during Halloween, when I took my kids out, I didn't come home and have 10 candies.
That's amazing.
She's like, I didn't have that craving. And it's true. Food loses the power. And you look at food completely differently because you're not dying for that binge. You're satiated. You're satisfied. Your body and brain are like, we're good. You're feeding us. Like, we don't need that calorie surplus in the evening.
That's right. It's freeing. It's very freeing because you don't have that constant, like, brain consumption of food.
Yeah, I love to think about like that food, almost like you hear now the food noise that a lot of people are talking about. And it's a great way of thinking about it because when you perpetually undereat, you're creating the relationship in your brain where your brain is now triggered by all of the foods that you're seeing constantly. So as soon as you finish, let's say you do eat breakfast, a lot of my clients initially used to skip breakfast and they might just have a coffee and then they go in and they're like, okay, maybe I'll have lunch. But their real biggest and first meal is usually dinner or an after work snack or something like that, that just kind of leads into dinner and then eating for the rest of the evening. But the thoughts around food are persistent and they're distracting. And this is one of the dangers. And there's a lot of things that we can talk about in terms of the signs and symptoms of what undereating looks like and feels like in the body. But one of the biggest is food noise because it takes up so much of your brain power all day long. It's a distraction. It can take you away from what you're actually meant to do if you're working or you're raising your kids or you're out running appointments and you're constantly thinking about what the next meal is or the smells of the food as you're walking through the parking lot and you smell the McDonald's or the cookies baking at the bakery or whatever it is. Or you're at a party or an event and food's being passed around and you can hardly concentrate.
Right. Been there too.
On the conversation. Yeah. And, oh, what was that hors d'oeuvre just passing by me just now? Like maybe I want that. Or when are they coming back
bread?
So that I can guess? And where's the bread? Yeah. Or you're out to dinner and you're just waiting to be able to order, but you're missing the whole conversation and the connection that's happening. That is one of the things that when we start to rebalance meals and start eating more consistently in the day, that food noise tends to diminish significantly. I can't say or guarantee that it'll go away completely, but it does reduce significantly.
Agree. It puts you in control.
It does. It puts you in control. And it also helps with managing your energy levels. A lot of women in perimenopause, like we're all complaining of lower energy levels. One of the best ways to counteract that is to eat more consistently throughout the day so that we're not, creating these energy dips on purpose via food. We always want to control what we can first and then manage the circumstances around what we can't afterwards. And managing our food throughout the day is certainly one that we can take control over.
And you appreciate food so much more. I mean, I was the poster girl for overtraining and undereating for many, many years. So what you're talking about, Jord, about like being in a social situation, an event, I was physically present. I was not mentally present. That food noise was so real. There are honestly events that I probably don't even remember because the food noise was so loud. So there's that. You're right. You're more present with the people you're with. But I also feel like food has taken on an entirely different taste and texture. So you are more mindful of what you're eating and the food tastes better. The whole experience is better. I remember we did a Zoom call with our girls months back, but on mindful eating. And we did a little experiment with them where we got them to bring that piece of chocolate or candy. And it was great. And we took them through a mindfulness exercise. It was very short, but the intention was just to have them slow down when they eat and concentrate not on the noise, but on what is that food in front of you? What does it look like, smell like, feel like? And I remember a few of them after they got to actually put that chocolate on their tongue and let it melt. They said their feedback was, I feel like I just tasted chocolate for the first time.
Isn't that powerful?
It's incredible. And on the heels of Halloween, it's so important, I think, too, because, you do get home and you just like hoover all of those chocolates in your mouth. You're not actually tasting anything, right? So it was very powerful for them to say, wow, I actually tasted chocolate. I felt the texture. And then even funnier, I think, was one of the girls, I can't remember who, was like, I actually realized I don't like chocolate. Like, I don't like this Kit Kat. It's gross. Because she never tasted it. She's like, I used to eat like 5 of these at a time. So yeah, lots of amazing things can happen when you slow things down.
It's so true. And it gives you the chance, when you undereat for so long, your body is going to respond to that. And your metabolism is going to regulate in order to be able to say, okay, well, if we're eating 1,200 calories a day, I'm going to down-regulate to have you eat 1,200 calories a day. And that's going to be our new maintenance.
That's right.
And that's not going to feel good long-term. Our goal ultimately, in order to have that strong sculpted physique, but also for food freedom, is ultimately to be able to train as effectively as possible so that we're building that muscle And that allows us to eat as much as possible so that we're being able to build a healthier relationship with food, quiet that food noise, being able to fuel yourself for your days and your workouts and your activities and all the things you love.
Absolutely.
And that's what helps us get out of this perpetual cycle of undereating and overtraining. So yeah, that's just my thought around that. T, there was something you wanted to add.
This is a good reframe. You girls are great. Like, this is all really, transformation comes down to reframing and changing your thoughts, which change your habits, which is ultimately going to change your physique, which is what everybody wants. So that's a great way of summing it up, girls.
Absolutely. So here's the big takeaway from this week's episode. Getting fit isn't just about how hard you train. It's about balancing the training you're doing with recovery and fueling your body, and something you can actually start doing today, because we always want to leave you with an actionable step that you can take away from these episodes and implement right away. We want you to remember, rest as actively as you train. This means planning intentional rest into your schedule. And on those days, don't do anything extra. Don't overschedule yourself. Don't add extra workouts because you think that's going to get you to your goal faster. There is no need. It's actually going to take you further away from where you want to be. And remember what we said, if you're doing things with purpose and intention, there is truly no need to do more because you're doing exactly what you need to be doing to get to where you want to be. So that's it for today. If this struck a chord because you have actually yourself been stuck in this cycle of overtraining and undereating, we really hope that this episode has made you pause and rethink your approach, because at Get Sculpted, I think you know by now, we want you to work smarter, not harder, to reach your goals. Join us next week for our episode all about how to never diet again, because we want you ending this year strong. We want you going into the new year already with a solid routine so you never feel like you have to be in this perpetual state of dieting. And if you enjoyed this episode, and we hope you did, we would love for you to share it with a friend who needs to hear this message too, because odds are, we would bet there are many women in your life who are stuck in this cycle themselves. Don't forget to hit subscribe and join us next week for more tips on how to build a strong and sculpted body. Thanks for tuning in. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Get Sculpted. We hope you feel inspired, empowered, and ready to take the next step in your fitness journey. Remember, building your 2.0 body is a unique journey for you. It's about showing up for yourself consistently and not being perfect.
If you loved today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave us a review and tag us on social at getsculpted.ca. Your feedback helps us reach more women like you who are ready to cut through the noise and make lasting changes.
For more daily tips, inspiration, and behind-the-scenes content, follow us on Instagram and check out our handles in the show notes below. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on Get Sculpted. Until then, remember this: getting sculpted isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter.